Welcome in, everybody, to Pro Football Enterprises. It is a pleasure to have all of you on board. As always, I am Ben Parker. That's Shane Ratliff, and that is Austin Freed. Got all three of us on tonight. We are doing more draft picks, and as always, I'll put out my little precursor to what I have to say. These are opinions, okay? We try to give y'all three different opinions from three different people on these prospects, and they will change to a degree. We may look at a guy as a first rounder in October, and we may get to, March, April, and decide that's a late second rounder. Okay. So we reserve the right to change our opinions on how good these players are. What will not change is the style of players that these are. Okay. All of these players have a fingerprint, they have an identity, and that by and large does not change. So what we try to do is give y'all a great feel for what these guys can do, kind of what style they are, what all their parameters are, and then we do also give you an opinion on how good we think they are. But what will not largely change between now and the draft, is what these players can do from a style standpoint. And so most of these videos will be good all the way up until the draft. This great wall of prospects that you see here, I've lost count, but they're all up on this channel, Pro Football Enterprises. Some of them are listed by single name for ease for you, the consumer. Some of them are part of a larger group. We may have done, 8 quarterbacks at one time or 6 wide receivers at one time, different things like that, but they're all on there somewhere. We will try to continue to make it easier for you as time goes forward. But all of those prospects are guys that we have covered over the last several weeks, and we look forward to doing it. All right, Shane, Austin, I got a lot of notes on tonight's player. Okay. Jeremiah Love. I started writing and I just kept writing. I think it's the most notes I've ever written. I may or may not read them all tonight. If I do, I'll be quick. But let me do a little bit of table setting here, and then we'll start with Austin tonight on Jeremiah Love from Notre Dame. Height 6'0", weight 215. His 2024 numbers: 163 carries for 1,125 rushing yards. Yards per carry, 6.9, 17 touchdowns. Also threw in 28 catches for 237 yards. That was his 24 season. Excellent year. And so far in 25, and listen, by the time you watch this video, these 2025 numbers will have changed, guaranteed. They may have changed drastically, but this is what I had at the time I put it down. So 66 carries, 341 rushing yards, 5.2 yards per carry, and 5 touchdowns, to the point that I was recording these numbers for Jeremiah Love. Austin, go ahead and get us started here, man, on Jeremiah Love.
This was a player that I really fell in love with during last year's season, the 2024 college football season, and he was one of the primary reasons that I had Notre Dame actually and as my favorite to win the national championship last year.
Yeah.
It didn't end up actually working out that way, but they put up a good run and he ran a lot. I thought he was extremely explosive. I thought he runs with incredible contact balance and speed and agility, and pretty much has, every weapon that you would want for running back except for like pure power. And this is again talking about his 2024 tape. The 2025 tape, I have seen something slightly different. It looks to me like he has put on maybe 10 pounds or so. I don't know what he weighed last year. I can't verify that, but it looks to me, watching this year's version of Jeremiah Love, that someone told him or he sought out that he needs to be one of these full-time three down backs, and to do that he'll need to put on a few pounds that way he can pass pro better, because that was something that he was pretty weak at. So it looks to me like he has lost a bit of that explosiveness that really jumped off the page last year. I mean, just it seemed like every 3 or 4 plays, it was just like, whoa, like that guy's got a level of burst that you just don't see very often. And it still shows up from time to time in these first, 5, 6 games that we've seen of him, but it's far less frequent. But I do see the power slightly. So that's what my thought is, that he has put on a little weight, maybe a little muscle, but lost a tad of bit of that explosiveness. I would love to see him back down at that like 205, maybe 2 to 210 range. If he's at 215 now, if that number's accurate. to where he can still kind of have that explosiveness. I don't think he needs to necessarily be, Saquon Barkley. That's just not really a thing that's needed in the NFL at this point. Most teams are running these dual back systems and things like that, and I just want to see him do what gives him the best chance of making an impact when he actually is on the field, rather than trying to be on the field more often and making less of an impact when he's there. So I do really like the player, especially going back to that 2024 tape. I think he has a tremendous amount of talent, and I think he has really good vision as well. We just kind of have to kind of see what he does in preparation, at the second half of this year, and then in preparation for the draft, and what he does in terms of, does he go more lean? Is this a his decision or is this a team decision? You hear it all the time, more so with like defensive ends and things like that, of like them just putting on 20 pounds randomly one season to try and maybe move and play more of like a 4-eye or something like that rather than being out wide. But it seems like that's kind of what's gone on here with Love.
Austin, that's a great point about the difference between 24 love and 25 love. So I really like that. I'll come back to you in a second here for kind of your where how high you might consider drafting him again. Not committed to it, but where would you maybe be thinking about him at? Shane, I know this is your team, and I'm assuming this is your guy. So go ahead and give us the lowdown on Jeremiah Love.
So as you said, Ben, full disclosure, there's a lot that he could have done wrong, and I still would have supported him. But I couldn't agree more with what Austin said. I think the partial reasoning for it too is that he knew he wasn't going to have as solidly built an offensive line as he did have last year. I'm sure gaining that weight may have played a role in that. But I completely agree with Austin in the fact that I think his best playing weight is probably somewhere between 205 to 210. I know they had him listed at 215 at the pop, but I think he was lighter than that even when they listed him as that. It, with the weakness that Austin mentioned, the pass protection, I still see that as a difficulty for him. He's gotten better, but I don't think it's a bright spot for him. I think the play that really solidified him last year, and as Austin said, as they were on their way to make a run at the national championship, is the game against Penn State at the very last moment, carrying defenders into the end zone, tight roping the sideline. All these are dynamic plays that he has in his repertoire. The other, as Austin said, when you take a look at it about the three down backs versus the different style, I see Jeremiah Love as a guy that a Detroit would love to have. He can be a Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery type player where you fill him in and he can play either of those roles. He can run downhill for you. He had the speed last year, had an ability to get around the corner. It's not as prevalent as it is it was more prevalent last year than it is this year, but I think he has great vision. Austin mentioned as well, contact balance. I think probably other than I think this year he might be the top draft pick when it comes to contact balance. There's not a lot of other guys in the college football world right now that really take it as good as he does, able to keep his balance, make that next move, and go through the hole. I do think that when it comes to the draft process, if he has a good agent, they will suggest, just as Austin did, let's drop a little bit of weight. Let's really surprise him with a 40 we're going to run. And once we get into whose ever program you're going to end up with, then we're going to see, maybe it'll be a little bit better if we put a couple more pounds on. But I think he does play much better at a lighter weight. And I think that, gone are the days where you need to be, a Napoleon Kaufman. You need to be these other guys that, were 240 and 6 feet tall and running the ball on 25 downs. Now if you're have the athletic ability and you're better, 15 carries and getting 105 yards out of him is just as good as having 35 carries and only getting 105. You can get your stars the ball a lot easier in the NFL today. And I think that opens him up. Also, the Notre Dame offense the last 2 years has involved running backs with catching the ball. So another process that he's going to be ready for in the NFL.
Very good work, Shane. And I'm with both of you guys on the weight thing. I hadn't thought it through as much as Austin had, but I'm with both of you on that. I would rather have that little bit of a lighter version, even if that means maybe necessarily he's not on the field quite as much. I would still rather have that version. All right, here we go. I'm going to run through these notes, okay? Some of it will be a little bit redundant with what you guys already mentioned. Some of it will just be additional info. Here we go. Smooth runner. He is very smooth. I like that. Athletic. Actually, incredibly athletic. He hurdles people. There is more than one video clip of him hurdling right over people. And I don't mean by a little. You know, it's not that offensive lineman jumping Peyton Manning crap. It is legit hurdling people. Okay. So that's very impressive for what it's worth. That doesn't earn you millions of dollars, but he can do it. He finds tiny holes. He can work through tiny holes. I've noticed that most of this on the 24 tape, a little bit from the 25. He can find the tiny holes. He has a beautiful long cut, puts him into open field. It's so smooth. It's not even so much of a Barry Sanders jerk cut. It's a very smooth cut that puts him into open field. So I really like that. He also has a lot of little tiny nuanced cuts working through traffic. I've noticed that a good bit. He can just work through the traffic very well with little tiny cuts. So he's moving his feet well. He has an extra gear he goes into once he sees open daylight. So once he's past kind of the line of scrimmage area, I don't know that he's got the greatest burst at the line of scrimmage, but once he's past the line of scrimmage, he's got a very nice extra gear that he goes into that really launches him off for some big gains there. I like that. Y'all mentioned the vision. Good vision. He is patient and smooth at finding an opening. He is very patient at that. He will wait for that hole to open. I like that. I really like the vision. He's just as smooth and patient following screen blocks downfield, I noticed, because a lot of times running backs want to get in a hurry on that. When he's got those screen blocks setting up downfield to the sides, he's patient on that. He'll wait on that. So I really like that patience as well. We're at while not physically dominant, y'all mentioned that. He does not go down easy. Austin, you mentioned the contact balance. He's not going to physically dominate people, but he does not go down easy. Don't try to just tackle him with one arm. Don't try to just hit him and expect him to go down. Don't try to just grab one leg. He's going to keep moving through that. All right. So he's not physically dominant, but he is not easy to tackle to put down. Has a consistently good stiff arm. All right. I've seen that more than once. Out there on open fields at the boundaries. He can lock in that stiff arm consistently. His legs rarely stop moving, and it's almost always productive movement. He's not a dance around, fool around kind of guy because I hate that crap. His legs constantly move though, and it is constantly propelling him forward in a productive fashion. So I love that. Good hands on pitches. Think Nebraska from the 90s with Tommy Frazier tossing out those pitches. He can collect those, you know. So I noticed that. It's not a not a normal thing in the day's football world, but he can do that too. Has a good bit of that. Sometimes lines up in the slot even. So if you like that flexibility, that's great. While the technique isn't great, he's a very physical blocker. He really seems to put pride in that. Just seems to enjoy hitting people as he's blocking. The technique isn't great, so it's not like he maintains that block, but he does like to hit people when he's blocking. So I like that. He's not a prima donna. This year, 2025, I noticed the Miami defense really held him in check. And that's a darn good defense, by the way. Okay. So that's not, that's not anything to shake your head at. But I did notice that. My final thought here on Jeremiyah Love. If you have a bad offensive line, please don't draft this guy. He's not going to rescue your football team, your franchise, your offensive line. Don't do it. Just, don't waste your time, his time, my time. At least have a decent offensive line because he's not just so dominant or electric that he's going to rescue your sorry offensive line that you haven't been working on for 4 or 5 years. Okay. So make sure you have some kind of a decent offensive line. And then once you do that and you add him in, it could really bonus up big time. All right. So at least make sure you have something decent there. And that is Jeremiyah Love. Austin, back to you. Final thoughts on Love and where you might consider drafting this guy.
I do really like the player. I think y'all both made a lot of great points and talked about a lot of things that I did like about him as well. I think in terms of talent level, he reminds me, and not, I don't mean this in a strictly like skills set comparison, but Travis Etienne when he was coming out of Clemson. It's just that sort of talent level is about what I see with Jeremiyah Love. I think they're very comparable in a lot of ways, and I think about where he went is about what I would expect Jeremiyah Love. And from memory, I think that was mid to late first round. I think that is a very acceptable place for him to go. If a team picks him higher than like 12, I would be a little shocked. But in the 13 to 25 range, I think he would be a safe pick, depending on what you're looking for in a running back. Because, like I said, he's not this do it all guy like almost like a JT from last year, where you didn't really have any questions in terms of the skill set. There are those questions, which is why he shouldn't go in that kind of upper echelon that we see sometimes running backs creep their way up to. He's much more of your standard, normal first round guy.
Shane, final thoughts and how high you might be considering him.
So I really like Austin's comparison. I think talent wise, as Austin said, I think middle first round to late first round. Where I actually see him getting picked is I think late first round, early second round. I think he's a guy that if you're maybe you're going to be the top of the second round, you might try to move up to get a late pick in the first. I think a lot of that has to do with how the running back position is seen in the NFL now. And like Austin said, unless you're a superior talent, there's not a lot of first round running backs getting selected anymore. They'll draft 14 left tackles and a couple of wide receivers and four quarterbacks before they're going to come to that. By the time you get to that point, you're going to have to mix some people in there. I think his talent warrants that, lottery pick, as you would say in some other leagues. But I see him as probably late first round, early second round for his selection.
All right. So to be clear, all three of us like him. I think I like him even better than both of y'all. I wouldn't draft him top five because when I watch him, say, versus Ashton Genty last year, I don't quite see that exceptional high end burst, both in running and receiving, that I saw out of Genty. But to me, it's not a huge difference between overall talent level between those two guys. It's not that far off. So I've got Jeremiah Love. I wouldn't mind if somebody drafted him top 10, but I do think Austin probably closer to where you're saying maybe that 12 to 15 range is probably where I'm going to go because ultimately and I hate to do this, I'm probably going to draft a defensive lineman or offensive lineman before I grab him, to be honest. It's just probably where I'm going to go. So I really do like him and I would consider him top 10, but it's probably not exactly where I'm going to end up taking him. I'm going to evoke an all-timer name here, okay? I'm not suggesting that he will be this player or he will ever reach this talent level. It just the imagery, right? The comparisons that we talk about, and that is Walter Payton. When I watch him run, he has the smoothness, the long-legged smoothness, and he's taller than Payton was, but he has that long-legged smoothness that Walter Payton has, and he has that patience and vision when he's running. And again, I'm not suggesting in any way. If I thought he was going to be Walter Payton, I'd say drafted number one overall. All right, that's not what I'm suggesting. But there are so few running backs I've ever seen that even bring up that imagery. He is in that mold when he's running. All right, so that's what I'm suggesting there. I just do like that running. The 25 numbers aren't as good. That can mean a lot sometimes. Sometimes it just means the defenses are keying on you more. All right, we see that a lot. Guys, second to last year pops, and all of a sudden defenses are all over him the next year. So his final year numbers tend to be down. That is not unusual, but just keep that in mind that is the case for him as well. All right, this is Pro Football Enterprises. That is Jeremiah Love. That is Shane Ratliff. That is Austin Freed. Thank you, everybody. Have a great one. Goodbye.